Good morning, everyone. Okay, so today is a good day. Yesterday we were able to get the beams done, which was really nice. And now we're going to be getting the joists installed. We got one partially installed last night. We had to stop. We realized we needed some screws that we didn't have specific for code. It was better to learn it early than later and have to go fix it. So we have that ready, and today is just going to be a big install day. Hopefully, we get a lot of this done. If we can get enough done, then we could call for an inspection tomorrow so that by the time they get here, everything's ready.
You guys, we totally did not get this done in one day at all.
No, I think it took, I don't know, 3 or 4 days total.
Yeah, yeah. It's something that seems straightforward and simple. You're like, how long could this take? And it's a trudge.
So, something we're doing here from the very get go. So, we are not putting this up against the house to start. We will push it over towards the house. The idea with this is that you have to have a rim joist at the back, but we don't join a rim joist because this is a floating deck.
Hmm.
So therefore, it's easier to do it pulled away, add your rim joist on, and then push it in.
Yeah, so we're doing it in kind of three sections, the one side, the kind of middle, and then the other side. And we are also installing our railing posts as we go along with our joists.
Right. So there's a lot of code about how these posts should be installed. We're going with the Simpson method using these super long screws. So part of it is you really can't get anything in place while you're doing such close of spacing. So we're doing 12 on center, which you can kind of see here at 12 on center.
Right. So we're doing joist and blocking and joist and blocking and simultaneously the posts at the same time, which also calls for basically doing it this way rather than doing all the joists at once and then inserting the blocking because we do need room for those Simpson screws.
Right. So the moral of the story is we have to add basically everything in as we're going rather than later. These are pressure treated ground contact 4x4 posts. We did what we could, but I mean, they're pretty ugly. I'm just going to say.
Yeah. So these will be our finished posts for our railing, but then they ended up being so craggy and lumpy and bad and scratched up looking that we had to put on a decorative finish afterwards later.
Right. So you can see a board here that's installed on the bottom right. That's just to hold it up while we install the actual 4x4 post. We are getting our level on both sides, and then we can actually screw everything in. And so, again, you can kind of see here how I'm on the side, and there's just no way this would have been possible with a 12 by 12 or 12-inch spacing. Hey, this is why we're going ahead and installing these. There's no way like that. Here, let me not post it that way. There's no way that could fit here with the next joist.
Oh, yeah, the joist will be in the way,
Yeah.
so we're doing
All right. So here, I'll go for this one right here.
and these are 8-inch screws
Per code.
per code. 8-inch for these that are around this post. Otherwise, 5-inch.
It's all for the post.
So for further technical information on how to do this per code, there's an awesome video on YouTube created by the Trex company that shows this specific assembly for these posts. And also, I think in the Simpson hardware booklet, it shows their hardware and also this assembly as well.
Right. So it's just one of the options that you can do. To us, this seemed a lot easier, though it's a lot of screws. um, anyway, it seemed a lot easier than the other systems where you have to have like tiebacks and things
Like tension ties and things like that. Although I think we did a price comparison of the tension ties versus doing it this way with the screws, and I think they ended up being about the same price.
Well, and you'll see some of these I have like an above shot that's with the drone so that you can kind of see like how we're placing these. So the 4x4 post screws into another 4x4, and then that 4x4 is screwed into the sides, into those side pieces of wood, and then those are screwed into the joists.
And so everything is tied together and there's specific screw lengths. Whenever you're near a post, you use, I think, an 8-inch screw and everywhere else you use a 5.
Right. What I'm doing here, those are 5-inch. And when you start to think about it and line them up, you're like, oh, yeah, so a 5 would go through all of that, whereas an 8 would go like far past it.
Yeah.
Which is not what you want. So then we start cutting down all the different parts. I think, Anna, I think you're here just cutting down blocking. So this is, and we're using, I should mention, we're using 2x10 joists. And the reason we're doing that is because we have 2x10 joists already.
Yeah, there was a crazy sale a couple of years ago. And so we just kind of got a stockpile and we're like, we're going to use this for something. So a 2x10 is a bit overkill for the joists. We also have the 2x10s for the beams below. And I think it's something where you want your joist to be the same or smaller than your beam. Your beam needs to be bigger, the same or bigger than your joist.
Right. And so, and these are PTGC, which is pressure treated ground contact. And there's our cat inspector. Pressure treated ground contact, everything is. And I think we got these boards for somewhere between $6 to $8 per 2x10x10.
And that's cray pricing.
That is crazy pricing. So I mean, we ended up overloading our trailer to make that work.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of us installing here, and I put in a lot of this footage because I wanted to show you what it's really like and how many screws you end up using. I would say that we have about $150 to $200 of those screws going into this total build, and this is just a 10x10 foot deck. So anyway, as I waddle back and forth.
Yeah, so again, so back and forth. So we're this small section here. This is pushed out towards the yard, and the whole thing will be scooched back toward the house. It gets quite heavy, actually, for us to end up scooching. Oh, there's the scooching.
Right. So now we're going to scooch it towards the house, or first away, so that we can put. See, there's the rim joist I was talking about earlier. So we can put that rim joist in.
And fasten it from the house side.
And you're going to see us using a combination of screws and nails. Part of the screws, if we're using just a normal screw, that's just a normal deck screw. And then what we typically do is we'll come back with either structural screws, which are those big Simpson ones that we're talking about, 8-inch or 5-inch, or we'll come back with the nails, because nails have more shear strength.
Yeah, and sometimes you just need a screw to tack something in place just to hold it for you to nail, too.
Right. So this is one of the posts here, again, making sure we're level, making sure we're screwing everything in.
And we have some composite shims that we're putting in there to make sure everything is plumb and level.
And just to be clear, when you're seeing me use nails here, these are 3.5-inch ring shank galvanized nails per code. And I'm using just our air compressed nailer to install it. This is just a Harbor Freight nailer. We've had it for several years, and it's just keeps on holding up, so I just keep on using it.
Yeah, it's pretty good, surprisingly. And so there's a good look at this corner assembly with the 4x4 blocking, the doubled up blocking, the screws coming in from the side, and the screws coming in from this corner and that corner over there.
And the lovely holly tree we'll have to try to kill again.
Man, that thing kept stabbing me.
If you ever tried to kill these things, they always come back. But anyway, and now we're going to actually shove it forward.
Keeping it a nice distance away from the building itself. I think there's code for that too.
I believe it was 2 inches.
Okay.
You'll want to check again. So all this stuff, guys, if you're watching this for instruction on how to do this, we're going to try to show you everything that you need to know. However,
this is not a how-to.
This isn't a how-to. Check your local code, talk to builders, talk to people locally, try to talk to your inspector, but they may not be receptive, like they may not want to talk to you.
Yeah.
But look how easy this goes in.
Yeah.
You don't have posts.
Yeah, when you don't have, like posts to the sides or anything of that. So this is just us trying to get the spacing to make sure everything is in the right area.
Right. And you want to put your blocking over your beams like that. That's really important.
And mid-span too, a little bit later.
And then I talk about no posts, and then we have to put in a post because you need to post every 5 feet or so. So here's us working this post. This is important enough to where I think we're going to let me play and talk about it here, just because it's so critical to passing inspections. Okay. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah. All right. So what we're doing here is we have 8-inch screws, right?
Yeah.
So the problem is this 8-inch screw, we're only having a 10-inch gap here. I know it's imaginary, but there's a board right here.
Yep.
There's no way for us to easily get these in there.
So we're doing this first.
So we have, these are 2 5-inches per code. This, though, I'm going to do 8-inch. So see, when I put an 8-inch, you're going to see it goes into this post.
Yeah.
And then later, when we come with the front piece of wood that goes here, what is that called? The rim joist?
Yep.
It's going to come through this way, and it'll come through that way, but through this, right? So that way it's seated in here.
Yep.
So that gives its 2 ways of being connected.
And the reason why we're adding this block here is because this post isn't cozied up to this joist. We need a spacer, and that block is a perfect spacer to go in.
Right. So
Otherwise, you wouldn't have this because we're just like in the middle here. We'll do different stuff in the corner. This one didn't require it, but we have it because we need that space.
So here you can see me putting those screws in. You can see it really plumb up when I put in this bottom screw. That really brings it into level.
And here we're installing the blocking and joist. But if you notice in the top, we've drawn these little bracket things to show where our blocking needs to be, because the whole assembly, again, is pushed out and we'll squish it back towards the building. So we wanted to make sure that the blocking actually rests on top of those beams. And that was the best way we could figure to do it so we weren't confused.
Well, and as a home DIYer, so we're overdoing it rather than underdoing it. Oh, here we're pulling strings. So this is pulling square to make sure that we're staying square, and we were.
Rim joist again.
So now rim joist against the wall. So I'm doing like 5 nails per blocking. I think you could get away with far less than that, but
yeah,
nails are cheap. How many nails are cheap?
When in doubt, overdo it.
Oh, and then on this end here, because this is right going into the door, we went ahead and used structural screws here, just because I didn't want to ever have any give in this point, because that's where you're going to put a lot of your weight. I know it's just a little overhang there past the beam, but still.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of cantilever on the backside of this beam and the front side.
Okay, and now we're finally pushing this big part of the deck towards the house. It is really, really heavy.
It's quite heavy. We did it though, but that's partly why you do this in sections rather than the whole thing all at once.
Right, and again, we did that so that we could screw everything in, beforehand. Oh, we're finished. Look, we're like, we did something. Oh, and here's a drone shot showing how far we are in the current build. Now, the corner post isn't in there yet because we don't have the rim joist to keep it in there at this moment.
So now that we have the majority of our joist installed, onto the hurricane ties.
Right, and this time we finally have structural screws. I couldn't find code on if we should be using 1 1/4-inch screws for going into the beams or 2.5-inch screws going into the beams. So I just erred to the 2.5 just because, again, DIY, it's better to just be safe than do the wrong thing.
And we had just barely enough room on each one of these to install these. And it turns out you're not supposed to turn them, it's put them on each joist.
Right. So apparently code in our area is 1 every 4 feet, but it certainly made the inspector happy to see this mini on here.
Yeah.
So, hey.
He's like, why not?
It works. These are like 68 cents a piece. We're fine. And then I started putting in the blocking going down the middle. So this is, I don't remember why I did it in this way, but anyway, this is because I'm connecting the two, like the smaller piece that we made and then that big middle chunky part. This is connecting both of those. Blocking. So we have one more underneath you, and then I think that's about it. We have, and then the rest,
the rest of the joists.
we add on a little bit more here, but this is almost done. It's exciting. Almost finished.
So here's the diagonal bracing going in the opposite direction as the one you can see the diagonal one that's going from the post to the beam.
Right, and this is again required by code. So we had the joist spacing so that those would line up. In another situation on the other side, we had to just make do with what it was and put in a little bit of blocking between it to make it line up.
Which is also totally acceptable.
Right. So then we got our last pieces on, and now we're starting to make sure that they're actually in line with each other and moving them so that everything lines up.
And there is this thing where you should be able to trim your joist ends to make sure that it's the right length for your decking boards. But we found it easier for our purposes just to try to get them all lined up specifically.
Well, and I don't have a great circular saw for that. Like my circular saw that I have that's battery powered is kind of underpowered, honestly. And the other one that I have that's not underpowered is kind of broken. So,
the corded one.
Yeah, the corded one is kind of broken, so I didn't feel comfortable with that. So I just went ahead and we just cut it with the miter saw instead.
Yeah, we felt more confident cutting these to length with the miter saw, and then instead of doing the circular saw, which accuracy.
Right, but I mean, we still got, so everything was semi-accurate. I think one ended up being short by about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch, which is a little bit more than I wanted. But all the rest of them were fine, so we kind of just went with it.
It's basically judging your own skill level here.
Yeah. All right. So tell me what's going on, Anna.
Okay, so you've got, this is for our stairs right here. So,
okay.
Stairs. So we've got from our post here, from there to our post here, less than 60 inches. So what was the point of me pointing that out to you?
So in our area, if you have a staircase that is wider than 60 inches, according to code, you must have a handrail in the middle of the staircase rather than just a handrail on each side.
Is there a distinction between interior staircase versus exterior staircase?
I believe there is, and I believe there's also a distinction between commercial and residential. So again, I couldn't find code clarifying. So for me, all I have is 2018 IRC code. It says a handrail is needed in the middle, so we're going to stay under that 60 inches.
Well, you know what something is interesting is that when I was looking at the code, it was talking about that you needed illumination for the stairwell. And I think they just took the information for interior stairs and just put it in the exterior deck section because you don't need exterior illumination for exterior deck stairs.
Right. So,
but it was in the code.
Right. So there's a few things like that where it will say something that is generally towards everything, but it doesn't actually apply in this situation or that situation. And if you're a builder, you already know these things. You're like, oh yeah, that doesn't.
Yeah, but as a homeowner, you're like, what?
Right. As a homeowner, you don't really know these things. So when you're DIYing or doing it yourself,
taking everything literally.
Right. You have to take it literally because otherwise you're going to fail inspection. And you can only fail so many times before you start getting fees, at least in our area. So we want to make sure that we're doing everything to code and correctly. So here's what it looks like on the end of this day. We're going to continue on in the next day. Good morning, everyone. Today is a new day, and I have good news. So we just had the zoning inspection done. So that's where they come and they look and they make sure that we're doing the things that we say we're doing where we're doing them. So that's really good. And not only did we pass that, the inspector liked what he saw so much here of what we've been building that he said we could skip the framing inspection and go straight to final. So that's great. That's really, really good news. That means we can just go straight to putting the Trex on and doing what we want to do to get this thing done. And we don't need to wait for that framing inspection. So that's great. We have the framing left to do today. We should finish that up today. Might hopefully be able to get things planed down and get some tape on it. Because we are going to get some rain tomorrow. And then next week is really nice temperatures. It's all in the 60s. It's going to be sunny. It's going to be really nice. It's going to be a good week to finish this deck. So anyway, that's today. I'm excited. Let's get going.
Okay, so that really was great news from the zoning inspector.
And really unexpected. I didn't know he could even do that.
Well, he said he's like close to retirement. He's been doing this for a long time. He was like, "You're fine."
Yeah, I mean, he saw what was it, all the hurricane ties.
Yeah,
and he was like, "Yeah, you guys are good."
He's like, "You're fine."
And here we are pulling square again.
Yep.
It's important to pull square and make sure that you're set. Which that means when you pull square on measure each side, they should measure.
Well, and we found out that this beam was a little long, so we're gonna have to trim it down with the dreaded circular saw.
Right. So I have some shots of failing, but here's basically me trying to make it work with my underpowered guy, and it does work.
Yeah, it was fine, and it doesn't cut all the way through, so you had to cut from both sides and then employ the use of a what is that?
Sawzall?
Yeah, sawzall.
Yeah, so just using the sawzall to cut off the middle. And again, I just wanted it straight enough. I think I might have even come back with a sander just to make sure it was not pushing out. So now we have everything set. We have everything squared. So it's just putting in the last blocking to connect everything and then the last posts. Now here you're going to see that we have a 2-ply beam here, which is 2 boards next to each other.
Yeah, for the joist, a 2-ply joist.
Right. Yeah. So, and this is a rim joist, and this is because we're going to have stairs, and we couldn't find specific code on if you needed 1 or 2-ply for our area. So we went ahead and went 2-ply because some areas do require 2-ply.
Right. So this is asymmetrical to the rest of it. We have 1 rim joist on the front, a rim joist on the side, which is a joist. And then that left side has a double for the stairs.
And now we're putting on this last rim joist. Now, I should say, once you're looking from above, everything is a 10 by 10. It doesn't make the deck asymmetrical or anything.
No. Yeah, we calculated that.
And now I'm putting in 16D nails, and then I'm planing down the high joist, because this is always going to be an issue you run into is high joists and planing them down.
Yep, and applied some cut and treat on top of that where we had to skim things down and checking to make everything, if this slides across, then everything's pretty good.
And there you go. So here is the finished framing of our deck. Now, there is a little bit more to go, though.
Yeah, just a smidgen.
So after this, here's everything finished. We still had to put the tape on. So we're kind of about midday at this point. And well, here, I just want to show you. Like, this is what it looks like. It's 10 by 10 feet. And then you can see all of our tools.
All this, it looks like junk over there, but that's all the stuff we were using, like clamps and like headphones and saws and just all that huge pile right there. Air compressor.
Yeah, I mean, just everything. It's at least a quiet air compressor. So now we're putting on the joist tape. Now, there is the debate for some people on if this is even worth it or not.
I think it adds protection.
In some areas, and not area, but some areas, it is code that now they require joist tape.
I mean, not here.
And what it does is extends the longevity of your boards, even if they are PTGC, which is pressure treated ground contact. Still having this on will extend the life of them, supposedly.
Yes.
So here's Anna putting down all of this stuff. If you don't know, Anna is very detail-oriented, where I am more of an 80%.
I'm okay with monotonous tasks. So, but this, you're like, oh, I'll just put the tape on. It'll take like an hour. It took longer. It's getting dark.
Right. So I kind of joined in because it's going to rain.
Yeah.
And so we're just trying to get this all finished. Oh, and here's the drone. So guys, this is why you don't fly a drone at night. So
it decided to go home
and runs right into the house.
It ended up in the gutter.
Oh, anyway.
So taking over with the iPhone.
So I had to go up on the roof and get that. But here's the tape finally on everything before it rained. Kind of gives an idea of what that would look like finished. And then it did rain.
Yep. The next day it's raining, and I'm glad we got that on there because you can see the rain puddling up on the tape.
Right. So, I mean, it really does work and keeps a difference. Oh, and now I got the drone working again. It was fine.
The drone was fine.
It's fine.
It was fine.
So overall, this went pretty well, and I would say this is well within reason for anybody that wants to do it themselves.
And I think the thing that takes the most time is honestly making sure that you're doing exactly the right thing per code.
Right. I mean, that took a while of looking up everything, making sure we were correct. But once we had that, it wasn't that hard. So if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. And guys, we're going to see you in the next video where we start putting on Trex.